Hello everyone, Jack here from Peach Guitars, and today I'm going to walk you through some of the most iconic body shapes and sizes from Gibson guitars. But before I do so, I just want to remind you to please like this video if you enjoy it, and to please make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel as well. Okay, so as some of you may have seen recently, I wanted to create a series where I compared different body sizes and shapes of acoustic guitars to try and give you a better understanding of what the different properties of tone you will get from each of those different body shapes and sizes of acoustic guitars. And obviously it's a little bit more paramount with acoustics. Most people will be, have the understanding that the body shape and size of an acoustic guitar really has a huge impact on not only the feel of the guitar but also the overall tone. And I wanted to apply the same kind of principle and apply the same test to electric guitars. Specifically, I wanted to start out with some Gibson Custom Shop guitars. The reason being, at this point in time, we've actually got a really healthy stock of some really cool Gibson Custom Shop guitars that aren't the usual specs that you would expect to see. So obviously we're very well known for having a great stock of Les Pauls, but it's not very often that you get to see 7 different Gibson Custom Shop solid body and hollow body different body shapes and sizes and models. So I thought this would be a great opportunity now to stack up these different models and show you how they tonally compare to one another. I think Gibson maybe gets a little bit of an unfair branding sometimes, and people will maybe just have the Les Paul sound as the iconic Gibson sound in their mind because it's maybe the guitar that you hear most frequently. So I wanted to take a good Les Paul. I've got a Custom Shop 60th anniversary Les Paul here, and that's going to be kind of the benchmark. But what I want to prove in this video is just how unique each of the models sound to one another. Despite them all having very similar wood configurations, there is actually a distinct identity to each body style, and you really hear the significant differences between guitars like the SG, and then when you move to something like an Explorer or a V, you really hear that they've got different mid-range characteristics. Obviously some of these guitars have different specs as well in terms of the electronics that are on board, so you've got to take that into account as well. This isn't kind of a blank slate without any other variables kind of a comparison. But I wanted to pick guitars that best represent each body style, and hopefully you're still going to get the impression that each body style sounds different and responds differently to clean tones and to distorted tones as well. So as I said, this is quite an unusual occurrence that we've got so many really cool different Gibson Custom Shop models. So I'm stacking up today a Les Paul Standard, I've got an SG Standard, I'm going to compare a good 335 as well, a 64 335. We've got a Les Paul Special as well for a variant on the Les Paul kind of model. I've got an Explorer, and I've got a Firebird as well. So as I said, this is fairly irregular that you would see this many Gibson Custom Shop models in one place. So this seems like a good time to do a comparison. So as I said, just a quick disclaimer, I know that the spec on each of these guitars differs from one another, so it's not like just having a blank slate comparison without any other variables. Okay, so for some context as to what else is going on in the rig today, I'm playing all the guitars through a clean Sir Badger 18 amplifier, or clean with just a tiny hint of breakup. And then all the gain tones you're going to hear are coming from a full tone OCD pedal on the floor, and I've also got a Strymon Flint for a bit of spring reverb, and a little bit of harmonic tremolo on some of the clean sounds as well. So I wanted to kind of get straight to the heart of the matter and give you a back-to-back comparison both with a clean tone and with a distorted tone, so you're going to hear that now. Okay, so as I said, I want to start off with the benchmark. This is a Gibson Custom Shop 60th Anniversary 59 Les Paul in a Royal Teaburst finish with the VOS finish treatment as well. This is kind of what most people will think of when they think of the Gibson sound. So I wanted to show you just how versatile a good Les Paul can be, both clean and overdriven. And what you'll notice specifically about these 60th anniversary guitars that I've talked about in previous videos is that they really span the full breadth of Les Paul tones. You can get them really bright and clear for the cleaner tones, and then they thicken up really nicely with that signature Gibson mid-range when you get some overdrive going. Okay, so moving on to the second model, and I'd say this is arguably the second most popular and revered Gibson solid body design, the SG. So this was obviously originally an evolution of that Les Paul design, with a thinner body, without the maple top. This guitar actually has quite a substantial neck on it, being that this is a 64 SG reissue, and you've got the cool Gibson tremolo tailpiece on here as well. But hopefully you'll just get the idea of the core tone of an SG. You lose a little bit of those lower frequencies, you get more of a pronounced upper mid-range. So this is kind of the anti-Les Paul, I think, even though it's very closely associated with that sound. If you don't quite like the tubbiness that you sometimes find out of a Les Paul model, an SG might be a perfect fit if you still want that Gibson sound. Okay, so I want to move away from solid bodies for a moment and talk about semi-hollow guitars. 335s have long been recognised as one of the most versatile guitar designs ever created. This particular example is one of my favourite guitars that we've had in the shop. This is a 64 ES335 reissue. And I think the 64s are kind of the sweet spot because you don't have the huge neck that you'd find on the late 50s 335 models. It's slightly slimmer, but it's not to the detriment of the fact when you get to the later 60s guitars when they had narrower nut width. This is kind of the Goldilocks 335 model. As I said, it's incredibly versatile, so you hear the kind of open quality and the breathiness in a cleaner tone that's great for R&B and jazz styles. And then when you put some gain on it as well, it responds in typical Gibson form with that kind of snarling mid-range, but you get a little bit of a bigger tone, a little bit more frequency range, I think. And it's just basically a do-it-all guitar for any kind of player. So I've got another guitar here from the Les Paul family, but despite that fact, this is a very different guitar in nature. The Les Paul Special, along with the Junior double cut as well, has a very different body design to what you would see from a Les Paul Standard or an SG. Kind of sits somewhere between the two. It's got a fairly thick slab of mahogany for the body. And despite the fact that these guitars were originally introduced as beginner and student models in the 50s, they've really found a lot of footing with some really big name players. A lot of people love just how direct these guitars sound. And having the P90 pickups and the wraparound tailpiece as opposed to the stop tailpiece and the humbucking pickups on a Les Paul, you get a lot more kind of clarity in the top end, you get a lot more high frequency. I think these guitars are a bit more dynamic because they clean up a little bit better than a humbucker will do. But you still get that great Gibson Les Paul sound, just with a slightly different signature, and I think these guitars are great fun to play and very, very versatile as well. Okay, so I want to move along now to the stuff I was really excited to show you in this comparison, and this is kind of the reason I wanted to do this. A lot of times these guitars, Explorers, Vs and Firebirds, are sometimes neglected, kind of cast out of the light by Les Pauls and SGs, despite the fact that they're very similar in terms of their genetics. This is still a mahogany wood body, but you've got a very different kind of tone because, I guess, of the different body shape, the different neck profiles, and usually different pickups in these kind of guitars as well. So what you find with Explorers and Vs as opposed to Les Pauls is I think they have even more mid-range content. It's kind of similar to what the SG has, where it's a little bit more clear and a little bit more defined. And that's often why you see a lot of kind of hard rock and metal players using these guitars for that extra definition in the mid-range. But if you turn down the gain and go for some clean tones, that can come in really handy as well. And I think the unique sonic signature of an Explorer or a V, which I'll talk about in a minute, is just something that you kind of have to hear for yourself, and it might just prove to be the missing link in the Gibson chain for you. So this particular model of Explorer is something that we don't see very often at all. It's very rare that you see custom shop level Explorers anyway, but this particular guitar is a 58 model. It's got a lot of kind of Lynyrd Skynyrd vibes. But it's got a lot of the similar tonality to a 58, 59 Les Paul as well. So it's still got the custom bucker pickups. This guitar's got a really fancy walnut finish, which I really like on an Explorer. And it's got quite a hefty 58 style neck on it as well. Okay, so moving on to another pointy guitar from Gibson. This is another thing that we don't see very often from the custom shop. V's are just as iconic as Les Pauls and SGs, and they found favour with so many different types of guitar players through the years. You've got the Albert Kings of the world, you've got the Michael Schenkers, and then more recently you've got like the guys from Mastodon who've used V's, and more specifically V customs like this guitar, to kind of get a really unique tone that differs again from a Les Paul or anything else that Gibson would offer. So this particular model of V is termed the V Custom, as I said, and what this kind of is Gibson's attempt to merge the tonal properties of a Les Paul Custom with the Mahogany body, the Ebony Fingerboard, and Gibson's 400 series pickups with the shape of a V, which has that unique mid-range and that unique sonic character. So it's a really cool kind of marriage of all these different properties. It's not traditional V in terms of its tone. You'll hear it's a little bit more modern. The pickups give it a little bit more edge and output. But it's still a versatile guitar, and if you're prepared to look like this when you're sitting down playing one, you're going to get some really cool tones out of it. Okay, so I want to finish up with this, which I think is the most unique guitar here. It's certainly the most different to everything else that I've showed you so far, but it's still one of Gibson's all-time iconic designs. The Firebird, through its various iterations, this is a Firebird 5, has always been one of those guitars that's found favour with players who just want something with a little bit of a different tone to a full humbucking Gibson guitar. The mini humbuckers that come as standard on most Firebird models obviously give you a slightly narrower kind of field of tone, so it's somewhere between a P90 and a humbucker, but it's still got the hum cancelling sound, so you can really pile on the gain with these guitars, but you get a lot of clarity. The body shape, I think, adds to that kind of tonality as well. It gives you a lot of extra top end, cuts away some of that the low frequency mess that you sometimes find with a thicker guitar like a Les Paul. This being a Firebird 5, this is a 63 reissue, so you've got the cool appointments like the Maestro Vibrola system on here as well. So this is something that you really don't see very often, so I really wanted to take the opportunity to compare this to the other body shapes in this lineup. But as I said, this has got different pickups, a few different appointments to the other guitars as well. So it's not going to sound anything like the others really, but it still sounds like a Gibson, and that's the point I want to get across. Something that Firebird 5, and in fact any Firebird guitars, always excel at, in my opinion, are the cleaner tones. So you're going to hear in the clip that I've put the Strymon Flint with tremolo sound on, and it's really open and breathy, and you'd probably be forgiven for mistaking this for something other than a Gibson guitar with the amount of clarity that you've got in the clean. So there we are. Hopefully you find this overview and comparison somewhat interesting. I certainly have done, and it's always great to sit down with multiple Gibson guitars if you can, and just remind yourself of how iconic each of the sounds that these instruments produce actually are, and always have been, and always will be. It's not just about the Les Paul for Gibson, it's not just about the 335. I wanted to remind you that there's plenty of other guitars available, and if you're looking for something that little bit different, Gibson will be able to cater it to you. So there we are. If you want to find out any more information about any of these guitars, please head over to peachguitars.com. You can click the link in the description below. And while you're down there, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Comment with your thoughts. Let me know which of these guitars is your favourite and how you think they all stack up to the Les Paul. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any content from us in the future. So that's it. Thank you as always for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Stay tuned, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.